Imagine having a shortcut, like a direct path, to really understanding the huge forces that shaped modern Europe. Well, that's exactly what we're aiming for today in this deep dive. We're looking at a concise history of modern Europe, pulling out the key insights, the really important bits from our source. The book, A Concise History of Modern Europe: Liberty, Equality, Solidarity.
It's quite a journey we're embarking on. Over the next hour or so, we'll explore, 2 centuries of European transformation, starting with those huge shifts of the French Revolution back in 1789.
Right.
And we'll follow that evolution right up to the fall of communism in 1989 and what came after.
And the core theme running through it all.
It's this fascinating tension, isn't it, between tradition, the old ways, and these powerful forces pushing for change, radical change sometimes.
Yeah.
And that interplay, that push and pull, that's what really gave birth to concepts like liberty, equality, solidarity ideas that fundamentally reshape the continent we know today.
And we're not just going to, list dates and events. We want to unpack the big revolutions, political, economic, intellectual. We'll get into the major wars, maybe highlight some surprising facts.
Absolutely. And connect the dots, see the broader patterns.
Exactly. So you, the listener, walk away with a richer, kind of more nuanced understanding of how modern Europe actually came to be. It wasn't simple.
Far from it. Okay, so where do we begin? Before 1789.
Let's start there. Before the big upheaval, much of Europe was living under, absolute monarchies. Kings and queens claiming they ruled by divine right, directly from God.
Right. That was the justification for their power. Their entire legitimacy rested on that idea.
And France is the classic example, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You have Louis XIV, the famous Sun King. He really embodied that absolute authority, his palace at Versailles.
Wow.
More than just a house.
Oh, much more. It was a political statement, wasn't it? A tool to control the nobility, keep them close, keep them vying for his favor. And he supposedly said, "L'État c'est moi, I am the state." Sums it up, really. And beneath that royal power, this incredibly rigid social structure, the old regime.
Yes, the 3 estates. Your whole life basically decided by birth. You had the first estate, the clergy, tiny percentage, maybe 0.5%.
Something like that.
But they owned about 10% of the land. And crucially, paid hardly any taxes.
Then the second estate, the nobility, again, small group, 1.5%.
Yep, owning maybe 20% of the land, also largely tax exempt.
Which leaves everyone else, 97% of the population in the third estate.
Exactly. Everyone from, rich merchants down to the peasants, who were the vast majority, maybe 85% of that third estate.
Yeah.
They did all the work, produced the goods and services.
But didn't necessarily own the land or have the privileges.
Precisely. And economically, it was still mostly traditional agriculture. But you also had expanding trade. Mercantilism was the dominant idea, governments managing trade to pile up gold and silver.
Encouraging luxury goods for export.
Right. But even then, new ideas were starting to challenge that. Adam Smith's free market theories, the rise of the bourgeoisie, this new middle class, they were questioning the old ways.
Which brings us neatly to the Enlightenment, a revolution of ideas.
Exactly. It wasn't fought with guns, but with reason. People started applying the methods of the scientific revolution, observation, logic, to society itself, trying to find the natural laws of human behavior.
And John Locke, the English philosopher, was huge here.
Absolutely central. He argued that knowledge comes from experience, that human nature is basically good and environment shapes us. But the real bombshell was his idea of natural rights.
Life, liberty, and property.
Inalienable rights. And he said political communities are formed by consent, a contract between the people and the government.
Which completely undercut divine right.
Totally. You can see the direct line from Locke to the American Declaration of Independence and the French Declaration of the Rights of Man.
The French thinkers, the philosophers, ran with these ideas.
They did. Montesquieu, for instance, criticized absolutism and came up with the idea of separating powers: executive, legislative, judicial.
Which the U.S. Constitution later adopted.
Exactly. And then Rousseau, pushing popular sovereignty even further with his concept of the general will, the idea that government should express the collective will of the people.
Through a social contract.
Right. Individuals give up some freedom for the common good. You can see how unsettling all this was for the old regime.
It emphasized reason, thinking for yourself.
Which undermines blind obedience to church and state, doesn't it? And it created this new thing, public opinion. Politics became something public, debatable.
It even seeped into popular culture, right? Like that play, The Marriage of Figaro.
Oh, Beaumarchais' play, yes.
Yeah.
Later Mozart's opera. It was scandalous at the time, satirizing privilege, mocking the aristocracy. It really captured that Enlightenment critique perfectly. The ideas were definitely in the air.
So you have these Enlightenment ideas swirling, economic pressure building, a weak monarchy. It feels like a perfect storm brewing for 1789.
It really was. The long-term causes were there. The social changes, the rise of the bourgeoisie, those powerful Enlightenment ideals. And Louis XVI, well, he wasn't the strongest leader, was he? Seen as indecisive, out of touch.
And the short-term triggers.
A massive government debt, partly from helping the American Revolution, funnily enough, a huge financial crisis. Then a terrible harvest in 1788.
Food shortages, inflation, bread prices.
Skyrocketing for ordinary people, that's devastating. It pushes them to the edge. That was the spark.
So the king calls the Estates General in 1789, which hadn't met for ages.
Over 170 years, a sign of desperation. And when the Third Estate realized they represented almost everyone, they just declared themselves the National Assembly.
And then the tennis court oath, that's such a symbolic moment.
Isn't it? Locked out of their hall, they just move to a nearby tennis court and vow not to leave until France has a constitution. Wherever we meet, there is the nation, a direct challenge to the king.
And things escalated quickly. The Bastille.
July 14th, storming the Bastille prison, a symbol of royal tyranny. Still France's national holiday. It showed the power of the people. Then Louis XVI tries to flee, gets caught.
Which didn't help his case.
Not at all. Then Prussia and Austria declare war, fearing the revolution might spread, which ironically just fuels the revolutionary fire more.
Leading to the First French Republic in 1792, monarchy abolished.
Gone. And then the revolution enters a much more radical phase. Popular democracy, universal manhood, suffrage for a time.
But also more extremism. Figures like Danton, Robespierre, the Jacobins.
Yes, very charismatic leaders and powerful political clubs like the Jacobins pushing a radical agenda, which leads, unfortunately, to the Committee of Public Safety and the Terror.
A dark chapter, trying to eliminate enemies of the revolution.
Brutally. Estimates are around 40,000 people guillotined. Dickens captures the horror of it in A Tale of Two Cities, that image of the guillotine. Chilling.
And what about women during all this? They were involved, but didn't get the same rights initially?
Exactly. They were active participants, but the universal rights declared were for men. Olympe de Gouges challenged that directly with her Declaration of the Rights of Women in 1791.
A powerful statement.
And across the channel, Mary Wollstonecraft's vindication of the rights of women went even further, arguing for education, voting rights, really foundational feminist texts emerging from this revolutionary ferment.
So after all that turmoil, the terror, the constant upheaval, people must have been exhausted, yearning for some kind of stability.
Absolutely, which is fertile ground for a figure like Napoleon Bonaparte to rise.
He's such a complex figure, isn't he? Preserving some revolutionary gains, but also becoming, well, an emperor.
A total paradox. He kept things like equality before the law, got rid of the old feudal system, but he also brought order, ended the chaos, and crucially, avoided going back to the old monarchy or the radicalism of the terror.
And his Napoleonic Code that had a lasting impact.
Huge. The Civil Code, over 2,000 articles, still the basis for law in France, much of Europe, even places like Louisiana. It cemented equality before the law, religious freedom, property rights.
Those still quite patriarchal regarding women's rights.
Yes, legally, women were subordinate. But it did end. Primogeniture inheritances had to be divided equally. A significant change.
And that Beethoven story, dedicating his Third Symphony, the Eroica, to Napoleon.
And then tearing up the dedication in a rage when Napoleon crowned himself emperor. It shows how deeply those revolutionary ideals resonated and how betrayed people felt when he seemed to abandon them.
Fascinating. So after Napoleon's final defeat, the powers meet at the Congress of Vienna, trying to put things back together.
Pretty much 1814-15, their main goal was restoring the old order, the old monarchies, and creating a balance of power to prevent another huge war.
And it sort of worked, didn't it? No continent-wide wars for about 100 years.
Remarkably, yes. But the ideas unleashed by the revolution, democracy, liberty, equality, they couldn't put that genie back in the bottle. Napoleon himself, ironically, had spread them across Europe during his conquests. They inspired liberals, Democrats, socialists everywhere.
So the restoration wasn't truly stable.
Not really. You see independence movements popping up, Belgium, Greece in the 1820s, another revolution in Paris in 1830, kicking out another Bourbon king. The pressure was still building.
Which leads us to 1848. The People's Spring.
A huge year. Revolutions breaking out almost everywhere. France, Austria, Hungary, Italy, German states. Only Britain and Russia were really untouched.
What was driving it this time?
A potent mix. Liberalism demanding constitutions, individual rights, stronger parliaments, and nationalism, the desire for unified nation-states based on shared language and culture. Plus, immediate factors like the potato famine and an economic downturn added fuel to the fire.
Can you quickly define those two isms, liberalism and nationalism?
Sure. Liberalism politically drew on Locke, Rousseau, Mill individual rights, constitutions, limited government power. Economically, it was Adam Smith laissez-faire, free markets, minimal government interference.
Okay, and nationalism.
The idea that people with a common identity, language, culture, history should have their own independent state. It could be top-down, like monarchs trying to unify their territory, or bottom-up, like Mazzini's Young Italy, arguing the people are the nation.
So 1848 sees revolts everywhere.
Yeah.
Paris again.
Yep, another revolution kicks out King Louis-Philippe. Metternich, the symbol of Austrian conservatism, has to flee Vienna. Uprisings in Hungary, Bohemia, Italian states. It looked like the whole system was collapsing.
But ultimately they failed.
In the short term, yes. Most were suppressed within a year or two. They didn't create lasting liberal national states everywhere immediately. But the ideas, they were cemented. Democracy and nationalism were now permanent forces.
And there were some concrete changes.
Definitely. Serfdom was abolished for good in Germany and the Habsburg lands. That's huge. Even the Russian Tsar felt the pressure and emancipated the serfs in 1861. And Austria had to compromise with Hungary, creating the dual monarchy in 1867, the Ausgleich.
But that didn't solve everything.
No, it appeased the Hungarians, but left other groups, like the Slavs, feeling sidelined. Sowed the seeds for future trouble, definitely.
Okay, so while all this political drama is unfolding, there's another revolution happening, maybe even more profound in changing daily life. The Industrial Revolution.
Absolutely. A fundamental shift from hand tools to machines, powered initially by coal and steam. It really gathers pace in Britain after 1780.
What laid the groundwork for that?
Well, there was an agricultural revolution first. Things like Jethro Tull's seed drill, new crops like turnips. Food production went way up.
Which meant population could grow without immediate famine, despite Malthus's worries.
Exactly. And the enclosure movement in Britain consolidated land, made farming more efficient, but also pushed people off the land, looking for work elsewhere.
Creating a labor force for the new factories.
Precisely. And the key invention, James Watt's improved steam engine, first used in mines, but then adapted to power machines, especially in textile mills. Cotton spinning was revolutionized.
Leading to the factory system.
Yes, centralized production and massive, rapid urbanization. Manchester is the prime example, explodes in size, becoming the first real industrial city.
And the steam engine also transformed transport, railroads.
Big time. Starting around 1825, railway mania grips Britain, then spreads. This creates huge demand for coal, iron, steel, building the very infrastructure of industry.
And the guiding philosophy behind all this was Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations.
Largely, yes. The idea of natural economic laws, supply and demand, the invisible hand guiding self-interest towards the common good. It fit perfectly with what entrepreneurs wanted. Free trade, minimal government laissez-faire.
But the human cost was immense.
Truly grim. Factory conditions were often appalling. 14-hour days, dangerous, repetitive work, pitiful wages. Child labor was common, kids as young as 6 working.
Dickens really captured that world, didn't he? Hard times, Oliver Twist.
He immortalized it, and he knew it firsthand, having worked in a factory as a boy.
Yet Britain celebrated all this progress at the Great Exhibition in 1851.
The Crystal Palace. A huge spectacle showcasing British industrial might and really kicking off the age of mass consumption.
But that exploitation, those conditions,
Yeah.
they inevitably sparked a reaction, didn't they? New ideologies challenging capitalism.
Absolutely. Socialism and, most powerfully, Marxism emerged directly from observing these conditions. Friedrich Engels, managing a factory in Manchester, was horrified by the poverty. He wrote The Condition of the Working Class in England.
And then he teamed up with Karl Marx.
Right. They co-wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848, right in the midst of those revolutions. Its core message, history is driven by class struggle.
Bourgeoisie versus proletariat in capitalism.
Exactly. Owners versus workers. And they predicted a workers' revolution to create a classless communist society. Workers of all countries unite. That famous call to action.
Marx saw his theory as scientific,
Right.
like Darwin.
He did. Historical materialism, the idea that economics, the mode of production, is the base that determines everything else. Politics, culture, religion, consciousness. Religion was just the opiate of the masses.
And he saw history moving in stages.
A predetermined path. Primitive communism, slavery, feudalism, capitalism, inevitably leading to communism, from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs.
But the irony is his revolution didn't happen first in industrialized Britain or Germany.
But in agrarian Russia, one of the least developed countries, Lenin had to adapt Marxism, arguing a vanguard party could lead the revolution, maybe even skip the capitalist stage, because imperialism was capitalism's final phase. History rarely follows the script.
Meanwhile, Darwin is developing his theory of evolution.
Yes, based on his voyage on the Beagle, on the origin of species in 1859, natural selection, then the descent of man, applying it to humans.
Huge impact. Challenge science, challenge religion.
Absolutely, it drove a wedge between science and faith, contributing to Europe's growing secularization.
But then came the distortion. Social Darwinism.
A dangerous misapplication. Herbert Spencer's phrase, survival of the fittest, using Darwin's ideas to justify inequality, arguing against helping the poor or weak because it interfered with natural struggle.
And used to justify awful things.
Militarism, racism, imperialism, eugenics. Later, even the Holocaust. The idea of the white man's burden leaned heavily on this distortion. It's a stark warning about twisting science for ideology. Engels even compared Marx's discovery about history to Darwin's about nature at Marx's funeral, shows how big these ideas felt.
Okay, so we have industrialization, new ideologies, and the rise of powerful nation-states, particularly Italy and Germany in the 1860s and 70s.
Right. After the failures of 1848's popular revolts, these unifications happened from above through war and shrewd politics.
Italy's Risorgimento involved figures like Mazzini, Cavour, Garibaldi.
A mix of revolutionary fervor, Mazzini, pragmatic diplomacy, Cavour, Sardinia's prime minister, and popular military action, Garibaldi's red shirts in the South.
Even Verdi's operas played a role.
They did, full of nationalistic themes. His name even became an acronym, VERDI, for Vittorio Emanuele Re d'Italia. Italy was unified by 1870, but then came the challenge of actually creating a unified Italian identity.
And Germany, driven by Bismarck.
Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Prussia, very pragmatic, very ruthless, not by speeches, but by iron and blood, as he famously said. He engineered wars against Denmark, then Austria.
Using new technology like the needle gun and railroads, effectively.
Yes, the 7 Weeks' War against Austria was a demonstration of modern warfare. Then the Franco-Prussian War. Victory there led to the proclamation of the German Empire in 1870.
Making Germany the dominant power on the continent besides Russia.
Exactly. And Austria's defeat in 66 led directly to that Ausgleich with Hungary in 67, the dual monarchy. Solved one problem, created others.
This period also sees the peak of European imperialism, the scramble for Africa.
Yes. One state imposing control over another, often using military and tech superiority. In the late 19th century, economic motives became stronger. The European Great Depression led to protectionism and a search for captive colonial markets.
Plus strategic rivalries. The Great Game.
Definitely. Britain protecting India from Russia, securing the Suez Canal, Lord Curzon seeing Central Asia as pieces on a chessboard.
And the scramble for Africa after the Berlin Conference in 1884 was incredibly rapid.
Astonishingly so. European powers just carved up the continent. Cecil Rhodes striding from Cape Town to Cairo, that cartoon captures the ambition perfectly.
Asia was also heavily impacted. India, French Indochina.
India, the jewel in the crown for Britain, French control in Southeast Asia. China wasn't fully colonized, but subjected to the treaty system, losing control over ports like Shanghai, Hong Kong. Japan was also expanding. The U.S. pushed its open door policy.
But there's a paradox here, isn't there? Europeans bringing ideas of liberty,
which then inspired the colonized peoples to demand their own liberty and independence. It planted the seeds for the decolonization movements that would come later.
Which brings us to the 20th century and the devastating world wars. World War I, 1914-1918, sparked by an assassination.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo. But the underlying causes were deep. Tangled alliances, triple alliance, triple entente, arms races, a strong military culture, intense nationalism, especially in the Balkans and the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
And it spiraled out of control so fast.
Terrifyingly fast. Germany's blank check to Austria, the ultimatums, mobilizations, Germany's Schlieffen Plan involving invading neutral Belgium, which pulls Britain in, a cascade of decisions leading to catastrophe.
And the nature of the war itself was horrific. Trench warfare.
Brutal stalemate. Unprecedented slaughter. Verdun, the Somme. Tens of thousands dying per hour, new weapons, machine guns, poison gas, tanks, submarines made it even deadlier and brought civilians into the firing line like never before. The sinking of the Lusitania.
How did it finally end?
Two key things. The Russian Revolution took Russia out of the war in 1917, and the U.S. entered in 1917, with Woodrow Wilson bringing his 14 points, ideas like self-determination, and a League of Nations for collective security.
The costs were astronomical.
Unimaginable. 8 million soldiers dead, 20 million wounded, a lost generation. 4 empires collapsed: Russian, Austrian, Ottoman, German, a dozen new states created. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh terms on Germany, breeding resentment. The League of Nations was formed but ultimately failed. It all just set the stage for the next war.
And art reflected the horror. Wilfred Owen's poem.
Dulce et decorum est, a visceral depiction of a gas attack, completely destroyed any romantic notions of war.
In the midst of this chaos, the Russian Revolution created a whole new kind of state.
The world's first communist state? Tsarist Russia was autocratic, backward. Lenin and the Bolsheviks seized power in 1917, creating the USSR. The actual takeover was surprisingly quick and relatively bloodless in Petrograd itself.
But then came Stalin.
After Lenin's death, Stalin consolidated power and imposed brutal totalitarianism. Rapid industrialization, forced collectivization of agriculture, leading to horrific famines like the Holodomor in Ukraine.
Millions died. And the Great Purge.
Wiping out perceived opposition, millions executed or sent to the gulags. Total state control over everything: economy, media, culture, private life.
Yet the Soviet Union did achieve rapid development and offered certain social benefits.
It did. No unemployment, free health care, education, subsidized basics, less inequality in wealth than capitalist countries. But the human rights cost was immense. Still, it became a model for many around the world, especially anti-colonial movements. Communist influence spread hugely by the 1970s.
And tragically, the war to end all wars was followed by World War II.
1939-1945. Fueled by the rise of fascism and Nazism in the wake of the Depression and lingering resentments. Mussolini in Italy, Hitler in Germany.
Hitler's Mein Kampf made his aims pretty clear.
Openly anti-Semitic, aggressive. Then came the aggression. The Rome-Berlin-Tokyo axis. The Spanish Civil War as a testing ground. Appeasement, symbolized by the Munich Agreement in 1938. Chamberlain's peace with honor as Hitler took part of Czechoslovakia. A disaster.
The war started with the invasion of Poland.
After the shocking Nazi-Soviet pact to divide it, September 1939. Germany's blitzkrieg tactics were devastatingly effective, quickly overrunning much of Europe. Battle of Britain, invasion of the USSR in 1941, Pearl Harbor bringing the U.S. in.
Key turning points. Stalingrad, D-Day.
Stalingrad was massive for the Eastern Front, a huge Soviet victory. D-Day in 1944 opened the Western Front. Germany finally surrendered in May 1945.
And within WWII, the absolute horror of the Holocaust.
This systematic genocide of 6 million Jews. From discriminatory laws like Nuremberg in 1935 to violence like Kristallnacht in 1938 to the final solution decided in 1941-1942, dedicated death camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, the industrial scale of murder is just unthinkable.
Elie Wiesel's Night gives such a powerful account.
An essential voice from inside Auschwitz. The scale is staggering: 6 million Jews, including nearly all of Poland's Jewish population.
And WWII was truly a total war. Civilian deaths were enormous.
Astronomical. Maybe 15 million military dead, but civilian deaths were almost double that, perhaps 60 million total worldwide. Civilians were systematically targeted: the Blitz, Dresden, Tokyo, and then Hiroshima and Nagasaki with atomic bombs. The psychological impact was profound.
So after WWII, Europe is devastated, divided. Enter the Cold War.
Yes. Ruined and split between the two new superpowers, the U.S. and the Soviet Union. Deep ideological conflict. U.S. promoting liberal democracy in the West, Soviets imposing communism in the East.
Germany and Berlin physically divided.
Yeah.
The Berlin Wall.
The ultimate symbol of the Iron Curtain, built in 1961.
And U.S. policy was key in the West. Truman Doctrine, Marshall Plan, NATO.
Absolutely. Truman Doctrine ended U.S. isolationism. Marshall Plan rebuilt Western economies. NATO provided the military shield, the nuclear umbrella, troops on the ground as a tripwire.
While the Soviets solidified control in the East. Berlin blockade. Crushing uprisings.
Yes, the Berlin airlift was the response to the blockade. They established people's democracies, and the Brezhnev Doctrine meant any deviation, like Hungary in 1956 or Prague in 1968, would be crushed. Moscow was firmly in control.
And the Cold War went global. Korea, Nuclear arms race.
The balance of terror, fear of communism spreading, the UN often deadlocked by US-Soviet vetoes.
At the same time, European empires are crumbling. Decolonization.
Yes. European powers were weakened, couldn't afford the empires. The US and UN opposed colonialism, and liberation movements, often led by figures educated in Europe, gained momentum. Vietnam, Algeria, long, difficult struggles.
And shedding colonies actually pushed European states closer together?
Paradoxically, yes. Less global responsibility, more focus on Europe itself, more reliance on each other and the US. It helped pave the way for integration.
And Western Europe recovers remarkably quickly. Democracy restored, welfare states built.
Yes. Rapid recovery. Rise of the welfare state, like the Labour government in Britain, and the first steps towards unity. Schumann's proposal for the coal and steel community in 1950.
Aimed at reconciling France and Germany.
A first step in the Federation of Europe, he called it. That led directly to the EEC, the Common Market, in 1957. Eliminating tariffs, free movement, deeper integration.
While Eastern Europe remained under communist rule, similar systems imposed.
Yes. Forced industrialization, collectivization, focus on heavy industry, limited consumer goods. But there was always underlying resistance, protests against Moscow's control and lack of freedom. That discontent never really went away.
Which builds towards 1989, a truly watershed year, the collapse of communism.
Unexpectedly rapid, really. Triggered by Gorbachev's reforms in the USSR, perestroika, trying to fix the economy, and crucially, him backing away from the Brezhnev Doctrine, saying Moscow wouldn't intervene anymore.
Red dominoes fell fast, mostly peacefully.
Mostly. Poland's Solidarity movement, led by Lech Wałęsa, forced elections and won. Hungary opened its border. Then the Berlin Wall came down in November '89, incredibly symbolic. Germany reunified quickly.
Czechoslovakia's Velvet Revolution.
Peaceful transition. Dissident playwright Václav Havel became president. His ideas about the power of the powerless, even his connection to Frank Zappa, it showed the role of culture and ideas.
Bulgaria, also peaceful. Romania was the exception.
Yes, the only violent one, ending with the execution of the dictator Ceausescu.
And empires dissolved. The Soviet Union itself
broke apart. Its 15 republics declared independence in 1991. And Yugoslavia disintegrated into civil war in the 1990s, Bosnia, Kosovo. A tragic outcome.
Creating a whole new map of Europe, new states looking west.
Exactly. A massive geopolitical shift towards Western models of democracy and market economies.
Which leads to the modern European Union, expanding from the EEC.
Right. Became the EU in 1993. Grew from 6 members to eventually 28, including many former communist states. Deeper integration, Europe without borders.
The euro currency in 2002.
A huge step. Common currency for many, making trade and travel easier, symbolizing unity. A shared commitment to democracy, human rights, market economics underlies it all.
And those funny examples, like debating condom sizes or beer pints.
They show something profound, don't they? That countries are arguing over regulations, not preparing for war. It signifies a deep level of peaceful cooperation unthinkable before.
The EU became a huge economic bloc, high living standards, the European social model.
World's biggest economy for a time, strong welfare systems, more equality, good healthcare, education, benefits, focus on gender equity.
The challenges remain. Expansion strains, economic crises, immigration.
Definitely. Integrating poorer, newer democracies wasn't easy. Free movement caused some tensions. The 2008 economic crisis hit the Eurozone hard, especially Greece. The 2015-16 migration crisis strained open borders,
leading to things like Brexit.
Britain voting to leave in 2016, a sign of discontent with globalization, immigration, loss of sovereignty, and part of a wider rise of populist nationalist parties challenging the EU project itself.
And there's an ongoing question about European identity, mostly Christian states. Russia's position.
Yes. It's largely Western Christian, though with significant Orthodox populations now. The Ukraine crisis highlighted Russia's view of itself as separate, opposing Ukraine's move towards Europe. The boundaries and identity of Europe are still being debated.
So we've covered an incredible sweep of history, 2 centuries of transformation from absolute monarchies to this complex, diverse continent of democracies. We've seen how liberty, equality, solidarity, those revolutionary ideas spread and changed everything.
And those forces are still at play, aren't they? That tension between integration pulling together and fragmentation pulling apart, between globalism and local or national identities, it defines Europe today.
In a world where economic strength and, well, soft power seem increasingly important, Europe has carved out a unique role as this huge economic power with a distinct model of cooperation. So the question for you listening is this: How will Europe's unique path, shaped by these dramatic shifts towards liberty, equality, and solidarity, continue to define its place in our complex, multipolar 21st century?
And maybe what lessons can the rest of the world learn from this ongoing, sometimes messy, but often remarkable experiment in trying to build unity while respecting diversity?